So basically, this is a technology where you are able to change color on demand using your smartphone. So imagine this is being used in, say, accessories, so your bag, and it will change the color and even pattern of the bag based upon the time of the day or the activity you are doing. So for example, you can use the same bag during daytime for your office work.
Welcome back to Fearless Narrative, a show that's all about the incredible stories of women who are changing the game, breaking the rules, and pushing through the boundaries to face their fears head on because they are fearless entrepreneurs and creatives, and we love to see it. I am your host, Courtlyn Jones, and on our show, we go into a deep dive into captivating storytelling and engaging conversations with these incredible women as they share how they are pursuing their passions and shattering glass ceilings along the way. We love that so much. It's so inspiring and so empowering to share these stories with you. And hopefully it will empower you to embrace your own fearless path. Our show is all about feeling the fear and doing it anyway, as well as women supporting women. We love that. We need more of that always. So before we get started, don't forget to hit the button to subscribe to our show. We also would love a nice 5-star review at the end. Without further ado, let's go into a new episode right now. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to Fearless Narratives. I am your host, Courtlyn Jones, and joining us today is my very good friend, Dr. Gayatri Keskar. Gayatri is a visionary thought leader in the realm of material innovation and product development. Her journey has been one of inspiring change, steering world-renowned brands towards sustainability and fostering collaboration to address industry challenges with purpose-driven innovation. As an advisor to companies such as NBCUniversal, Nike, Microsoft, Ford, Hunter Douglas, and Estée Lauder, she has played an instrumental role in promoting positive impact products and experiences. Gayatri, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. How about you?
I am fantastic. Happy to talk to you today. Okay, so let's dive in to know about your background. So I'm dying to know how you got into the world of material science.
Certainly. So I did my PhD and postdoc in material science. I was always inspired by the potential of materials that can solve really complex industry problems. And during my studies, I realized there is a lot more to materials because of the way they can be manipulated, they can be constructed. And that opened my eyes to the whole material science world and how they can be used for different applications across different sectors. During my earlier part of the career, I was much more involved in the lab research, working on next generation materials. But as part of my current role at Material Connection, I'm excited to be part of a design community to work with them on a day-to-day basis to understand their creative process and how they think about materials, how the product design process works. So very excited to be part of this design journey with them. And for those who might not know about Material Connection, we are the leading material-driven design consultancy and library based in New York City. So as you see in my background, this is our materials library in New York City. We recently moved to a new location, so it's slightly different layout, but fairly same concept in terms of cataloging new innovations in materials and manufacturing space. We have been around for over 25 years, working with all consumer-facing design industries, helping them identify innovative and sustainable material and process solutions for their needs.
I love that. I'm also curious to know how to define material science.
Certainly. So materials have this unique ability to transform product experiences by creating aesthetic excitement, whether that's coming through unique textures, colors, forms, or inbuilt interactivity features. Nowadays, we can use smart materials, programmable materials that can respond to different environmental clues. So it could be the pressure, the temperature changes around you, humidity, or even pollution. So it's acting as a new functional dimension to the product design process. Certainly, the material science scope has expanded tremendously. It's no longer just limited to the materials. It's also about what kind of processing technologies can be used. And thanks to new advancements in digitalization, now using 3D printing, we are able to create forms, shapes that were not possible before. So that is giving designers new tools to use in order to realize their vision using unique aesthetics, functionality, constructions, assemblies, in order to amplify their influence in this world.
So, in the world of material science, you've navigated across various industries. How do you believe your expertise can directly benefit artists and designers in their creative processes?
Materials is what connect the digital world with the physical world. Mm-hmm. It's acting as that tactile environment, which is so crucial to the creative process. Mm-hmm. Everything that we touch, feel is through the materials. And so they have this transformative potential in order to curate experiences that are customized for a specific audience or for specific environment. These days, we are seeing extreme environmental conditions everywhere. And that's begging the question of how we can use the materials in a way that can allow designers to provide comfort and convenience on the individual as well as community level. And that's where some of the innovations that we are seeing in the material space are making that possible. So it's really interesting whether it is through the visual indication by changing color in response to temperature or change in form. So now the same material can provide or protect you from heat when you are exposed to high temperatures, or can, make sure that you have more breathability if you are in warmer environments, is really instrumental in creating functional yet compelling experiences.
I had a creative on the show who I also met a few years ago, and she's an interior designer, and she told me how she always goes into her spaces, into her projects, thinking about the look, the feel, and the smell of her environment while she's creating. So, in her words, it was to give the client the full 3D experience. And she apparently was also a client of MCX, of your workplace, and she has gone to the space to see the materials in real life to really, she needs to feel everything and smell it and touch it herself before even, adding it to her idea list. But I think it's really cool. There's a space for artists and creatives to come in there and to actually play around with these materials firsthand. How did your role as a trusted advisor to Fortune 100 and 500 companies come about? And what inspired you to guide these organizations toward the development of unique and impactful products?
I was fortunate enough to be exposed to the dynamic startup environment early on in my career, where I got to work on these next generation materials. And it really inspired me to think differently about how these materials can be used in a way that is beyond just functional materials, providing just the functionality or performance that is required for the application. To your point, certainly materials appeal to your emotional side as well. They connect with end users on a much deeper level. And I was really excited to see this potential as well as my desire to make meaningful impact, which steered me towards a technical advisory role. And in my current role now, I have that real-time feedback from designers while leveraging innovations coming from cross-industry partnerships in order to truly understand the potential from both the technical as well as aesthetic or experiential side to see how we can develop these harmonious solutions, these synergetic collaborations that have the potential to create something which is truly meaningful and is able to go much farther in terms of creating that right environment.
So in your experience, what role does material innovation play in shaping the aesthetic and functional aspects of a product or design?
I feel material innovation serves as a cornerstone for both the visual as well as functional appeal of products and experiences. It enables designers to push boundaries by creating products that not only look aesthetically pleasing, but also perform optimally And nowadays, it's equally important that they align with the evolving sustainability and technological standards. So for example, I have here a great honeycomb lattice structure. So this is constructed using our regular paper. It's just glued together in a relatively simplistic manner, but creating something which is so interesting. So emphasizing the fact that it's not always that the innovation is coming purely from the chemical composition or the material composition, but it could be the structure, the construction of the material that can also lead to more unique functionalities. So in this case, as you can see, that this structure is expandable in one direction, but in other direction is super strong. So it can take on really heavy weights while still being lightweight because it's just made from paper. And as you can see, like over 90% of the structure is porous. So it doesn't necessarily have that solid core, but it still provides the strength that is necessary. Now you will say, what kind of applications you could use this material for? So it could be used for, say, bed frame, or it could be used as a base for your sofa or furniture. Because as I said, in one direction, it provides you the strength so it can take on the weight. But because it's been portable and it's been lightweight, it's easy to move around. So think how difficult it is typically to move your sofa from one place to other, just in the living room. Now with this, you can easily move it around. Not just that, because this is a fairly simplistic construction, you don't necessarily require fancy equipment. So there's a way for you to also develop this locally. And thanks to IKEA, we all are used to, assembling our furniture at home. So it's not necessarily causing more challenges at that end. It also addresses the usability of the material. And the modular design makes it possible to use it in different ways, in different locations, in order to create something that can last longer.
So for those of you who can't see the product, watch the video online to actually see the product in our hand. But it seems like a material that I wouldn't naturally assume that it's for furniture. Looking at it firsthand, I'd be like, what the hell is that for? So that's really interesting to know, like, to see how the creators of these products or materials, how they think about these things, because I would never have thought to do it in this way or at all. So collaboration is at the core of your work. How do you foster meaningful cross-industry collaborations to drive positive impact products and experiences?
So from my earliest days in academia, one thing I learned very quickly, because I was always part of multidisciplinary teams, is the importance of identifying common ground, shared objectives, while always keeping in mind the broader vision in order to cultivate fruitful collaborations. And that always helped me to bring together teams from different backgrounds with different expertise because of that shared goal. And recently, I'm really excited to see some of the cross-industry, cross-product collaborations and partnerships that had led to unique ways of advancing the industry. So for example, one of my favorite one is actually recyclable toothpaste tube that was developed by Colgate-Palmolive. So for those who might not necessarily know the materials that are used in toothpaste tube, it's a multi-layer laminate structure. Some of you might have noticed the aluminum layer which is inside those tubes in order to protect it from the environment. But this very structure makes it difficult to recycle it. And that's why it was a fairly challenging task to come up with a construction with a material that would make it possible to easily recycle it. And it took them 5 to 7 years in order to develop this constructed toothpaste tube. They are using the material that is currently being used in milk jugs called high-density polyethylene. But they realize the scale of this problem. 20 billion toothpaste tubes are discarded every year.
Oh my God.
I know, that's a daunting number.
Yeah.
So they decided to actually work with their peer companies, so which technically would be their competitors, but they decided to make sure that this technology is available to all of them while working with recyclers or downstream processors to make this recyclable toothpaste tube easy to access and accept by everyone involved in the supply chain. And that's where even the end user came into play, because ultimately, in order to recycle any product, the end user needs to know exactly which bin it should go in, and if it is truly recyclable, whether their local infrastructure will support that. So it's interesting to see that something that took them so many years to solve that challenge, rather than keeping it to themselves, they realized that there is a much more potential here to solve that problem at scale by making it accessible to everyone that's involved in the industry. It's really interesting to see these days is how companies have started working together in that pre-competitive collaboration in order to make it possible to solve some of these biggest challenges that are very difficult to be addressed by a single company or entity.
Collaboration is crucial for a lot of our growth. So I think that's really cool to see how others are using it to expand their ideas and their products. How can artists and designers navigate the challenges of adopting new materials, ensuring both creative expression and practical feasibility in their projects?
So one thing that we embrace at Material Connection is material-minded or material-driven design. So let me explain it to you, like what we mean by that. In a typical product design process, you have your CAD drawings, you make mock-ups, and then you identify suitable material and processing technology to apply it. In case of material-driven design, you first take into account the characteristics and quality of the material, and then find out what could be applied and how it can be applied to create a more value-adding product. So understanding the material properties before applying them into use is essential to develop more meaningful experiences. As we talked about, some of these materials may not have been possible to be constructed in a manner using traditional processes, but now they can be, and that gives us the opportunity to think outside the box and how these materials can be designed in order to provide the functionality that we are looking for. One of the great examples that I wanted to share here was shape memory materials. So we have seen this effect where the material will remember its original shape. So for example, it could be in the form of metal. Polymers is something we have started seeing recently. So this material, imagine it to be used for, say, your bike handrail grip. So the material, based on your body temperature, will meet the exact geometry of your fist. So it can provide the appropriate grip that you're looking for. So although the material used is same on all bikes, it is possible to achieve that personalized, customized experience that will enhance your riding experience. The same technology can be also used in insoles in your footwear. So these kind of materials are making it possible to create those hyper-personalized experiences that are going to increase the enjoyment and keep those products in use longer.
That was an amazing way to explain it. I was immediately thinking about a mattress when you were saying body forming, or having a personalized effect there, because like that. But like having a bike handle, I never really realized. I never thought about that, like how your hand has to fit, in a certain way to make you feel comfortable. But that was awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
I was going to say, definitely there are so many examples. Like mattress is also a great example, because you need, again, that firmness level of the mattress will vary based on who's using it, or what you would feel comfortable. So that could be also a great example. But certainly these are the materials that make you think, like, where else I can use them, and what kind of experience can be further customized based on these materials.
Yeah, absolutely. So for designers aiming to create products with lasting impact, what considerations should they keep in mind regarding the choice of materials and the sustainability of their creations?
Purpose-driven product development is so important in today's world. especially when we are already bombarded with limitless options. Just because you can doesn't mean you should create new products. And for example, I would like to talk about an adaptive packaging concept that was developed by MIT Design Lab in collaboration with Puma. And it's interesting because most of the times the materials that are used for packaging are over-engineered and they last longer than the product itself. And this was a concept that addressed that it is possible to program the shelf life of the packaging based on the product it is used for. So the way this packaging works is basically it's created as a sleeve. So it can be used, for example, for again, your footwear or any other consumer product to go inside. And it is made using two types of microorganisms. The first one that will inflate the sleeve in order to provide the protection or cushioning during transportation. And then the second type of microorganism that will deflate it over time by degrading the material without leaving behind any residue. And the interesting aspect of the technology is you are able to program that degradation time in a way that it can be used for short-term or long-term usage without necessarily compromising on the performance of the material.
Can you tell us about some of the most exciting innovations in material science and product development that you've seen recently?
So, I mean, it's really difficult to select a few, but there are certain areas where we are seeing more newer concepts than others. And one of that area is biomaterials. There have been numerous drivers for new advancements in biomaterials. Certainly having access to precision fermentation and synthetic biology technologies are making it possible to have much more programmable ways. And also thanks to AI, now it's possible to identify the right kind of microorganisms that can be used for different applications. Also, having the exposure to 3D printing is making it possible to work with materials that perhaps might not have been considered before. But at the same time, what excites me is also the experiential aspect of these materials. So for example, recently there have been few concepts that were developed in order to change the way we interact with products. And one of them is using living bacteria that was coated onto fabrics and clothing was made out of it. And the whole point of doing that was, first of all, that bacteria, or it was using algae that can actually absorb CO2 or carbon dioxide from the environment and release O2. So it can be considered as air purifying material. But at the same time, because it's a living material, it changes the way you care about that product, because it cannot be necessarily washed the same way as you will wash your synthetic, textiles. It needs that special care. And that changes your whole attitude towards how that product should be used. So it's an interesting way to think about biomaterials that provide the kind of functionality which is difficult to achieve until you use very much engineered synthetic material. So something that is living, that is definitely coming from a bio origin, but at the same time, it's also changing the way you're interacting with your textiles. You feel like you need to take care of it because it's like, you have a plant or you have a living entity in your house. So it's a really interesting concept, like how these biomaterials are not only providing new functionalities, but are also changing the way we are interacting with our products.
So can an algae or biomaterial or biomaterial be used for fashion?
Yes, definitely. I mean, there have been quite a few companies that are working on using algae or seaweed in different capacities. It can be used, as I said, like in coatings. It can be used for inks. It can be also like a couple of companies are working on extracting biopolymer that can be extruded into fiber. So very soon you can also use algae in the actual fiber composition of the fabric itself. So there are different ways, anywhere from ink to a dyeing pigment to a fiber, that these materials can be incorporated into the existing textile supply chain.
So cool. I just like wonder if like the algae would rot over time, or is it just like coated with something so that it stays intact?
So that's where the care protocol comes in play, that you need to have it enough exposure to sunlight. It needs that kind of care, otherwise it is going to die, because again, it's not in a living form in each and every application that I mentioned right now. But that specific concept that I was talking about before, that experimental work was trying to keep it alive, and that was the whole objective of that experiment, is taking care of it so that it won't die. Because if it dies, it's very visible. You can see changing color of your clothing that will indicate that it's dead. I mean, the company works very closely with the end user to make sure that they provide them instructions in terms of how to take care of that. But at the same time, worst case scenario, if it dies, you can send it back to them. They will reapply. And so it's not necessarily that it cannot be reused again, but that creates, again, that emotional bond with the product to make sure that you want to keep it alive.
Got it. I have plants, but I'm not that great at taking care of them. So I would probably not be the best person for an algae material for anything, but I understand there's a lot of care that needs to be put into these materials for sure. In your collaboration with startups and larger enterprise companies, what trends or case studies have you observed in terms of development of sustainable materials and making them accessible to designers?
So certainly, as we talked about, collaboration is key. But what's interesting is how we can work together. We, in a sense, the startups and established giants can work together in order to accelerate the path of some of these next generation materials. Because most of the times, these startups are working on some really interesting, innovative ideas, but those take time in order to come to a market. And unfortunately, time is not on our side. So we want to make sure that any new technologies that are developed are able to reach the market as soon as possible. And so rather than the startups spending their resources and time on reinventing the wheel, it makes sense for them to collaborate with larger corporations and to leverage that existing infrastructure, that know-how, in order to bring those products to market quickly. There have been quite a few examples that we have seen in recent times where startups like Modern Meadow has collaborated with Evonik or some of the other industry giants. So Modern Meadow has developed this bioalloy technology where they are using specialized proteins and mixing them with biopolymer in order to offer unique properties. So some of their products have been used. For example, they have developed this biocollagen that can be used in cosmetic or beauty products. Their technology can also be used as an alternative to leather industry, where they have collaborated with Limonta, which is one of the leading Italian leather company. So there is a lot more potential with these platform technologies. We have also seen Evolved by Nature that have developed activated silk technology. So again, based on proteins, but different feedstocks that are being used, some of them that are coming from synthetic biology, some of them are naturally derived from silk, but giving you the ability, so both of these can be used in cosmetic beauty for anti-aging effects, or can be applied onto textiles or leather to reduce the synthetic chemicals that are currently being used, while providing the kind of performance that you require from these textiles. It's just fascinating to see that this green chemistry approach is certainly taking over each and every component that is being used in different sectors or different industries. The another part of this conversation is we want to make these next generation sustainable materials sexy and appealing. So how can you make them more accessible to designers? Because most of the time, sustainability is kind of invisible. It's hidden. Just looking at the material might not necessarily tell you the total or the complete story of the material.
Right.
And that's where some of the companies like Covestro had started developing an aesthetic toolkit specifically for designers, using sustainable materials like recycled or bio-based polymers. But they have developed this toolkit that gives them access to these chips that have been molded, and they show like different textures, different colors. They have also gone through the whole CMF exploration to further enhance the ability of how the material can be used, to encourage designers to start working with these kind of materials, because we want to get designers excited. And unless and until they are able to tell that story, which is which can be translated through aesthetics, it's difficult to get designer on board with some of these new materials. So it's interesting to see how companies that are typically more on the raw material side and might not necessarily have direct relationship with designers are now trying to actively pursue those collaborations in order to bring these new materials to the design community.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Given your extensive work with brands like Nike, which is amazing, how do you see the influence of material science evolving in the realms of fashion and wearable art?
Wow, wearable art.
I honestly love the example of Zendaya, who wore the fiber optic dress that was like really amazing for her Cinderella look. That wasn't like, amazing, but that was years ago. So I'm just curious to know about, new things that are happening, new materials that are out there today that are as exciting or even better than that one.
Definitely. So thinking about wearable art, certainly some of the recent examples that we have seen is using conductive inks that are biocompatible, so can be directly applied onto skin. So they act as like temporary tattoos. So it could be using metals like silver or gold leaf that have been used before in different forms and shapes, but it gives you much more visual excitement as well, because it acts like you have like a printed jewelry on your skin using that. And then
That's
you can
fun.
use LEDs or some of the other objects to connect it, because it also acts as a conductive medium, connecting these different components together. So you can have like a printed necklace using these materials. We have also started seeing use of graphene and some of the carbon-based materials that can be used again for similar application in terms of temporary tattoos, but for more measuring your biomarkers. So these are actually invisible as opposed to the metal ones that we talked about. And the purpose there is to measure your biometrics in terms of your biomarkers, like your blood pressure or your glucose, your sweat, and some of so sensing capability of these materials, but in a way that now can be directly printed onto skin or in a much more wearable, flexible format is quite interesting to see. Because what we have seen recently, especially since COVID, is everyone is looking for that kind of performance data. It's not just the professional athletes, but we also want to improve our everyday performance, whether you enjoy any outdoor and indoor activities, how you can give your 100%. But then there is another aspect to that is also, as I mentioned earlier, about how you can measure that real-time feedback based upon the environment or activity you are doing. So there are ways now you can measure, your hydration level through the sweat. So if you're doing any like physical activity, you can use these kind of wearable tattoos or patches that will provide you that information. There is also UV patch. So there are more like health related benefits associated with that as well, not just for optimizing your performance. Let's say if you're outside for a longer duration, that patch will change color to visually indicate now it's time that you should reapply sunscreen, because your UV exposure is higher than normal. So that's one aspect where we have started seeing more materials being used in a more athletic performance or health benefits related manner. But another example on the lines of the story you mentioned about is chromorphous. So basically, this is a technology where you are able to change color on demand using your smartphone. So imagine this is being used in, say, accessories, so your bag, and it will change the color and even pattern of the bag based upon the time of the day or the activity you are doing. So for example, you can use the same bag during daytime for your office work, but then if you're going to a certain event or party in the evening, you can change the color of the bag to match with your shoes or to match with whatever the theme of the event is. So again, how you can create that multifunctional immersive experience using the products that traditionally wouldn't necessarily be considered as that need to be customized based on the application, but now using just one product, it gives you the ability to program it based on the environment that you want to use that product in. So I thought like that was a really interesting way to again design a product which will provide you that kind of programmability, which will certainly make it not only mechanically or performance wise fit, but also emotionally connect with your product to use it longer.
Yeah, that sounds really cool to have the colors changing for your fashion. That's really fun. I think that the one you talked about with like the sweat is I can see it being really important. It just still sounds disgusting to me, but I can see the value in the health aspects of that for sure. Now, bonus question. Can you tell us the last time that you felt fearless, a time when you were afraid that you did it anyway, and then how did it turn out?
Yeah, it was just funny because it was the other event that happened this week that reminded me of the same thing. So basically, this was just when I joined Material Connection. And in the first or second year, I guess, so we decided to do live webinars. And this was even before COVID. So around that time, it wasn't necessarily that common to do live webinars. And that was definitely the first time we were trying on our end. And I wasn't that used to like public speaking, let alone be as a part of a live webinar where so many things can go wrong. And in the first couple of instances, there were a lot of technical challenges that we had to face with because we were not sure. We also had a live Q&A session. So there were multiple challenges that made it difficult. But I was really excited about being in an environment that I wasn't comfortable with in order to, again, push myself to be best of what I can do or best version of myself.
Yes. But I will say I did watch it, so I know how amazing you were on that webinar, and you did a great job. You were glowing on the screen. You were speaking really fluently and perfectly, and it was just a great job all around. So be proud of that because it was great. For our audience, which includes aspiring entrepreneurs and creative minds, what advice would you give to those looking to make their mark in the realm of material innovation and sustainability?
The creative community is so instrumental in developing compelling products and experiences. Today, we expect so much from our products. We want them to be unique, sustainable, at the same time resonate with our values. And it's difficult to do so using traditional materials or processes. Thankfully, material science has evolved tremendously as we talked about several different areas where we have started seeing new advancements, new types of materials and technologies that can be used, which make it possible for the designers to create multidimensional narrative that deeply connects with their target audience while also driving positive change. So they can act as that change catalyst, designing the materials and products that are so compelling and so transformative, as we mentioned about having that immersive engagement through your products. It's certainly time to engage in the material transition and co-create experiences involving the end users in order to promote more responsible production and consumption practices.
Well said. Thank you for that. And lastly, how can our audience find you?
So you can reach me on LinkedIn at Gayatri Keskar.
Okay, thank you for joining us today, Gayatri. You have been amazing, and it's been such a great time talking to you and having your story shared.
My pleasure. It was so great to catch up with you. I know it's been a while, and thank you for inviting me and sharing my story with your audience.
And that is a wrap. Fearless Narratives airs every Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday. Thank you for joining us today. You have been an amazing audience, and we really love your support. So we also would love for you to give us a nice 5-star review. And until next time, stay fearless.